My name is Patty Stuard, and I am the MLS Director for the South Central Wisconsin MLS. I also have Heather Brooks with me today. She's the Data Integrity Manager. And thank you all for coming. I know it's beautiful outside and not a real fun way to spend your morning, but MLS rules are important, and the fact that you are here makes us think that you think they're important as well, which is awesome. All right, so the format today is we're going to run through a presentation that's going to last maybe not quite an hour. I'm going to take the first half of it, and then I'm going to pass the baton to Heather to finish up the presentation so you don't have to listen to me drone on for 60 minutes. You can ask questions anytime if something comes up. Otherwise, we're going to have plenty of time at the end, I think, for some Q&A. So let's get started. It was working. Sorry about that.
Promise we tried this earlier this morning.
Yeah, and it worked. All right, well, we might have to do it without the clicker. Do you want to try this with batteries? Yeah.
So you're
Button is here.
yourself?
There we go.
All right, we're good.
All right, we're good. Here we go. All right, I'm going to start out with just talking about a little bit how the MLS works and why we have to have rules. MLS is very unique in that it relies on the cooperation between competitors. There's not a lot of services out there that rely on competitors to cooperate. We also create a collaborative marketplace that benefits the buyers and the sellers and the respective agents. And the buyers and the sellers, they need different things from the MLS. So we have to give them both what they need. And we also have to provide reliable data for our members, plus all third parties that consume our data. And there are a lot of third parties that consume our data. These rules are intended to protect the realtors who work within the framework of this cooperation and to ensure data integrity. It also ensures this marketplace that buyers and sellers can be treated fairly. Some of our rules come down from the National Association of Realtors as a mandate, and some are carefully crafted by your peers that sit on the MLS committee and the MLS Board of Directors. Lucky staff is tasked with enforcing these rules and addressing the violations. But this helps to keep the database accurate and ensures this level playing field for all of us. So the MLS staff, we do not look at every listing that comes into the database. We do not scour your social media posts and your websites looking for violations, looking for things you screwed up on. Basically what we do is we do searches in Paragon, just like you do, and we look for data irregularities in these searches. And then when we find a data point that's not correct, we reach out to the listing agent, hope to get it corrected. We also get reports from agents when there's data that's wrong. We also get reports from agents to tell us when somebody of their peers has done something wrong or outside of the MLS rules. Our goal as staff and as leadership is to educate members, not to fine you. We hate calling you up and telling you you've done something wrong and fining you. It is absolutely the worst part of our job. We really do not like it. All right, now in talking about all these rules that go with MLS, all listings that you take, they have to go into the MLS with the exception of a few things. If you take a listing in one of our service counties, you have to put it in the MLS. So this is our map. We cover a lot of the south central part of the state. If you take a listing outside of our market area, it's optional to put it in the MLS. Also, it's mandatory to put in single family, condominium, multifamily of 8 units or less, lots and acreage listed for sale. If you take a business commercial listing, an auction listing, or rental, you don't have to put it into our system. Those are optional. And I see some of you taking notes, which is cool, but this presentation and a recording of this presentation is going to be sent to you after the session. All right, another type of listing that doesn't go in the MLS is an office exclusive listing. So if you have a seller that says to you, I don't want everybody to know that my property is for sale. Maybe it's a a pastor of a large congregation, or maybe it's a principal in a school district, and they want to remain somewhat private. They may say to you, I don't want this on the internet. I don't want all the realtors to know this is for sale. I don't want a sign in my front yard. I want it to be private. I want you to try to sell this for me internally in your own office. You may take an office exclusive listing for that. Now, in order for an office exclusive listing not to have to be put on the MLS, the whole term of that contract has to be exclusive to your office. So basically, you can't do something like have a listing contract that says, okay, for the first 2 weeks, we're going to market this in our office only, but then after that, we'll put it on the MLS. That's not an office exclusive. That's not a seller who's trying to remain private. That's just potentially a way for you to try to sell it in-house, and that's not the purpose of an office exclusive listing. But if you do have a situation where the seller of an office exclusive listing decides their circumstances have changed and now they don't mind going more public with it, then what you would do is expire the office exclusive listing, and then you'd create a new listing contract that would be put in the MLS. An office exclusive listing can only be shared with two groups of people. The first one are brokers and listing agents within your listing firm. You can share with those people. And you can also share them with clients that are under buyer agency within your firm. If you market an office exclusive listing publicly outside your office, you could potentially get a fine of $500 a day. This is one of the heavier fines, so you don't want to market an office exclusive listing if you have one. Again, office exclusive listings, they cannot be displayed or advertised to the general public or to agents outside your listing firm. They cannot be advertised by the seller or on behalf of the seller. And you can't even advertise the existence of an office exclusive. An example of this would be having a button on your website that says, click here to see non-MLS listings. You can't do that to steer people or capture buyers. Okay, even though you don't put office exclusive listings on the MLS, you still need to report them to the MLS. And how you do that is you send the listing contract and a form. It's called a seller exclusion form, which can be found on our website. And when you receive this PowerPoint, that will be a live link for you. You send that to us within 4 days from the list date, and that's how you report to us that you have an office exclusive listing. And if you don't get it sent to us within 4 days, there's a $100 day fine. So are there any questions about office exclusive listings? Hopefully you don't have to take one. If you've never taken one before, if you do get a seller that really wants to remain off the MLS, you can give us a call and we'll talk you through it, because we don't want you to mess up on an office exclusive listing, because that can get expensive.
What about these companies, like I get emails that say, we have new off-market listings?
A lot of,
I'm like, oh, I'm an agent. They're like, oh, sorry, and then, do you report those?
you can report those to us. The ones that we've had reported to us, what they're actually doing is if you were to click on that button to get these off MLS listings, they're sending you delayed listings. Typically, that's what they're going to send you. But yeah, if you want to report it to us, we can follow up to make sure that they're not advertised on office exclusive listings. And anytime you report anything to us, it's always anonymous. We would never tell the person you're calling about who it is that called. We want you to feel comfortable calling us so we can follow up on stuff like this. All right. So now I kind of talked about listings that don't go in the MLS. Now we're going to talk about the normal listings that go in the MLS. So first of all, we're going to start at the very, very beginning. You get a call from, say, a past buyer, and they say to you, I'm going to be ready to sell my house in a week. I'd like you to come out and sign a listing contract. All right, that's really cool. Well, you can't market that listing yet because you don't have it yet. You don't have it under contract. You can't start marketing it publicly until the first date of the term of the contract, or we call that the list date or the effective date, and that's line 311 on the residential listing contract. That's when you can start publicly marketing the listing. And this is not just an MLS rule, it's actually a state statute. You can't market a listing without a listing contract. Now, the state statute is a little bit unclear as to what marketing is. So in the past, we would get calls from agents that would say, you know, this agent's marketing this listing, I can't find it on the MLS. And then we call the agent and say, you know, is this something that you're getting ready to put on the MLS? And they say, no, I don't have it under contract yet. And then we call the first agent back and we say, well, there's not much we can do about it. You know, they don't have it under contract yet. It is against state statute, but it's not an MLS rule. So maybe a year ago, the MLS directors thought, you know, we should really have an MLS rule that parallels the state law because it's not good for a realtor to be advertising a property they don't have listed yet. So the MLS Board of Directors came up with a very nice rule, and I'm just going to read it to you. It says, if any detail of a specific property sufficient to activate the interest of a potential buyer is publicly marketed before the effective date of the listing contract, the listing agent shall be fined $200 a day from the time of advertisement until the effective date of the contract. So now when you call us and say, I can't find this listing on the MLS, and we call the listing agent and they say, I don't have it listed yet, at least the MLS can do something about it now. So before it was just a state law, now it's also an MLS rule.
And Patty, for clarification, the state wasn't doing anything about these, so.
That's what we were told,
Yeah.
yes. I'm not going to throw the state under the bus, but yes,
True.
that is what we were told. Now you can see that we have a little asterisk there for, we need a definition of public marketing. What is public marketing? And this definition actually comes from the National Association of Realtors. Public marketing includes, but not limited to, flyers displayed in windows, yard signs, digital marketing on public-facing websites, brokerage websites including IDX and VOW, digital communication marketing such as email blasts, multi-brokerage listing sharing networks such as the Realtor Facebook group, and any communication which introduces the property to agents outside the listing firm, and then applications available to the general public. So that is a definition for public marketing. So you might ask yourself, okay, I know that I'm going to have this listing next week. Who the heck can I tell? We can't really speak to state statute and what the state might do, but from MLS perspective, you're not going to get in trouble if you talk about this listing within your company, with your peers. If you call or contact a client or customer that you think might be interested in this property and talk to them one-on-one about it, MLS isn't going to do anything about it. We don't think that's public marketing. You're welcome to do those things. Okay, so any questions about what you can and can't do with a listing you don't have yet? Okay. You guys are easy. All right, so now let's jump ahead a week, and we are meeting with this new seller, and now we have the listing under contract. So once the public marketing begins, you have one business day to get it in the MLS. So you've taken the listing, let's say it's Wednesday night, you met with your sellers, you have this listing contract, and on Thursday, you're all ready because you've known for a week that you're going to get this listing. So you've got your pictures taken, you've got your social media content put together. So Thursday morning, you wake up and you start advertising that listing. You have one business day from that advertising to get that listing in the MLS. And this is something that the National Association of Realtors actually came up with about this particular rule about 2 years ago. It's called clear cooperation. You might have heard that term. Basically, they say, if you're marketing this listing, you should have it on the MLS. Because any MLS that gives you a grace period to put your listing in, that's for you to get things ready. If you have it ready enough that you can market it out to the public, you need to get it on the MLS. And you have one business day to do that. We need another definition here. What is a business day? A business day is a calendar day other than Saturday and Sunday, any public legal holiday under Wisconsin or federal law, and any other date designated by the president such that the Postal Service does not receive regular mail or make regular deliveries on that day. So that's a business day. All right, if you don't get your listing in within one business day after you start marketing it, you could be fined $500 a day for that. Yep.
So let's say it's a Friday, do you actually have till Monday?
You do.
Or, oh,
You have till 11:59 p.m. on Monday. Yep.
okay.
Thank you. Yep. All right. Now we're going to talk about the time frame for MLS input if you're not yet marketing. So let's say you're not Johnny on the spot. You still need to get your photos. You still need to write up your MLS comments and your social media posts. You actually at that point have 4 calendar days to get it in the MLS if you're not marketing it. And that's been a rule for a long time. We give you 4 days, 4 calendar days to get a listing in the MLS. Okay, and again, We start counting at the first day of the term of the contract, and in this example, the listing date is June 1st, so you would have till June 5th at 11:59 p.m. to get it in the MLS. We don't count that first day. Yep.
Is there any discussion of making it consistent, calendar days or business days? There always seems to be confusion.
I agree with
Calendar
you.
days, business days, business days, calendar days.
Yeah, we started out with the rule about the calendar days many years ago. It was the National Association of Realtors that came out with the business day thing. And the Board of Directors talked about that a little bit, but I mean, if it is confusing for people, we can definitely talk to the Board of Directors about it again and see if they can maybe make it a little bit more consistent.
Because you could cut it to like 2 business days.
Yeah.
It would be about the same as 4 calendar,
Well-
if you have like over a weekend or
Yeah.
something like that.
The National Association of Realtors says we have to make it 1 business day, so we'd have to keep
No, I
that
mean
one.
this one.
We'd have to check, yeah. And the reason we have the 4 calendar days is because a lot of offices, only their admin staff can add listings for the agents. You know, so if there's like a holiday or something, realtors would have to be really careful about when they list a property if we didn't give them at least 4 days.
You're just
So
saying
that's-
use business for both.
Yes, it would be a lot easier.
Yeah, well, if we use maybe 3 business days, yeah, we can talk about that. All right. Any other questions about the timing?
Not timing, but so public marketing is also including putting the sign on the front yard as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, definitely.
I have a question about
Yeah.
that. So I'm a newer agent, so I've been working with some other agents regarding open houses. And I host a couple open houses on. I never once asked them, hey, is this definitely, an MLS or anything? Am I, responsible for that? Because I go on my social media and I'll say I'm hosting the open houses, these dates here, and announced to me it was never listed on MLS, do I get fined? It's penalty for me.
We would go back to the listing agent.
Okay,
Yeah, if you're working on behalf of the listing agents, it's the listing agent's responsibility.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. All right, so now I think we've got the timing down. A little confusing between business day and calendar day, but we know when we have to get it in the MLS. The next decision that you're gonna have to make is how you wanna put it in the MLS. One of the options you have is to put it in as a delayed status. A delayed listing is one that's not really fully ready to market yet, and it's definitely not ready to show. So let's say in this situation that we had, you went and met with your sellers and you're walking through the house and you realize that there's a few things that maybe they should take care of before they start showings. But you're not going to say to them, I'll come back in 3 weeks when you've got this ready. You obviously want to get that listing contract signed that day. So we give you the opportunity to sign that listing contract even though it's not ready to show it, and you would put that listing in a delayed status. There's a lot of rules that go along with the delayed status, and we'll just take them one at a time here. With a delayed status, you still have to put it in the MLS in the right time frame. So if you can actually market a delayed listing. That is not against MLS rules. So if you start marketing your delayed listing, then you'd have 1 business day to get it in the MLS. If you're not marketing it, you'd have 4 calendar days. So the same thing applies with the time frames, even if you put it into delayed. When you put a delayed listing into the MLS, you don't have to put all the information in. You don't even have to put a photo in. The only thing you have to put in is a valid address, a bona fide list price, and the date you're going to be allowing showings in the show date field. That's really all you have to put in. You can put in a bunch of zeros and NAs if you want to. These delayed listings are not sent to public websites. They are not sent out in auto emails, or they aren't sent to collab centers. Agents can see the delayed listings in the MLS, and you can manually send them to any potential buyers that you have. Now, a question we get a lot is, it's really a pain to have to go into the MLS all the time and search for these delayed listings and send them out manually. I see some heads nodding, yeah. The reason for that is listing agents don't want these going out in blast emails. And the reason for that is a lot of times they're not ready. There's no photos, you can't show them, there's missing data. So what we're hoping you're doing when you're sending out these delayed listings to your buyers is we're hoping you're setting expectations for them and explaining to them why the photos might not be that great, or why there's no photos, or why they can't see that property right away. So you're setting expectations manually you can't really set those expectations if you're sending out a blast email because you don't even know that it's gone out of the system. So that is the reason we don't allow you to include the delayed status when you're setting up your auto searches. All right, while a listing is in delayed, the days on market don't count. Delayed is considered an off-market status. Now, just a little note about days on market in the MLS. When you put a listing in the MLS, the days on market start counting at the list date, not the date you put in the MLS. So for instance, with delayed listings, if you wait till the 4th day to put it in the MLS, you're gonna actually have 4 days on the market at that point. So the only way to have 0 days on the market when you put in a delayed listing is to put it in on the list date. Does that make sense? No. All right, now. All right. So again, we need a contractual date to start counting days on market, and that is the list date. So the list date is day 1, and then if you put it in the system as delayed, it still counts from that list date. So it might just be easier to remember, if I don't want any days on market, I need to get my delayed listing in on that first day. And remember, you don't have to put in all the information. You can put in just the address, bona fide list price, and the show date.
I'm hearing that as if you want accurate days on market, don't put your delayed status listing in until the public listing date. That doesn't make sense to me.
It's the opposite. So like if your list date is July 1st, you should put it in on July 1st as delayed, and then you're 0 days on
Yep.
market. But if you put it in July 3rd, then you'll have 2 days on market.
Yeah, because days on market really start counting when you list the property, because you're marketing it. It's on the market. Just because it's not on the MLS doesn't mean that it's not being exposed to the market. So it really needs to start on day 1, the list date.
The only other fix there would be to, amend your listing contract by 2 days because you didn't get it into the MLS yet. And, I mean, couldn't you, if you needed to?
Well,
If they were gonna be animated about it being 0?
yeah, actually you can't, because you can't
Because
undo.
the day had already started.
Yeah, you can't undo days of a contract. So you can't move up days of a contract once you finish them. So you really, if you want 0 days, if it's that important to you, just put it in on the first date. You only have to put in a few fields of data.
Don't wait.
Okay, another thing with delayed listing is when you put a new listing into the MLS, it shows up on the market monitor as a new listing. With delayed listings, it actually shows up twice. It shows up once when you put it in as delayed as a new listing, and then it shows up again when you move it to active. So you kind of get double exposure with the new listing on the market monitor. Once you have a delayed listing and you decide to move it active, you can't go backwards. So make sure when you're ready to move the listing to active, that you're ready, because you can't move it back to delayed. When you put a delayed listing in the system, you can set the show date 45 days in the future. So you can have it on there in delayed for 45 days. If on day 43, say, that your seller sends you an email and says, I'm not going to be ready, my contractor didn't get here to fix whatever needed to be fixed, all you need to do is forward that email to the MLS and we will extend the 45 days for you. But we need an email from the seller requesting that.
So if that happened and you didn't want to go about like having to do the emails and stuff, you can just put it as active and then put like showings don't start until.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, that's actually going to be my next slide. Thank you. Yep. Yep. All right, now the most important thing about delayed listings is they cannot be shown by anyone, including you as the listing agent. There's potential big fines that attach to this. Now you notice before all the fines were listed, this case actually goes before our board of directors if you violate this. So the way that works is we would get a complaint from somebody, and it could actually be either the listing agent or the showing agent that could get the fine. So if you're a showing agent and a listing was in delayed and you set up to show it, make sure it's been moved to active before you show it, because both the listing agent and the showing agent could get in trouble for showing a delayed listing. So basically what happens is we get a complaint, we type up the complaint, and then we send it to whoever the agent's being complained about, and we ask them to reply, and then that complaint and reply go to our board of directors. It's all done anonymously. All the names, company names, agent names are retracted from the reports, And then the board of directors considers, based on the circumstances, what the fine can be. The MLS board of directors can fine up to $15,000. They've never done that, not that I've been here 38 years and they've never done that in 38 years, but they can. So, I mean, they give MLS staff the ability to fine for like the $100 a day, $200 a day. We consider those administrative fines. But this is one that actually goes to the board for them to talk about and consider. All right, another note about delayed listings that I think some people are a little confused about is when you're talking to your seller and you decide that this listing needs to go into delayed because it's not ready to be shown yet, you can't wait 4 days, put it in the MLS and show it during those 4 days. Just because you have, I mean, if you're not going to show it, that means you're not going to show it from the list date. MLS rules actually kick in at the list date, not the date they go in the MLS. That date to allow you time to get it in the MLS is just time for you to get your ducks in a row and get your pictures and things. But the MLS rules actually kick in on day one. So you can't, bank a bunch of showings those first 4 days for yourself and then put it in MLS and say, oh, nobody else can show it. That's not allowed. Okay. All right. So we talked about, yep.
Let's say you meet with the seller and they're not ready to list for over 45 days. Can you sign your contract and set the date for the, 60 days from now to secure it so no one else can steal it?
Well,
or
you don't really secure it at that point.
you don't?
No, because that period of time between when you sign the contract and the effective date, you're not protected. Somebody could swoop in there and they could sell their house and you wouldn't get a commission. Because your contract, even though you signed the contract at the bottom, your contract doesn't start till the effective date. So if something happens before that date,
Okay.
But can't you set your effective date if the day's signed and they say we don't want showings for the next 60 days?
yes, you can do that.
And then we just email you the seller's instructions to not allow showings for that extra 15.
Well, right, you'd put it in for 45 days as delayed, and then you'd send us the instruction to extend that, yep.
Okay.
Good question. All right. So now we're going to talk about the normal listing. The normal listing, you're ready to list, it comes in as active. This one's really easy. It's ready to market, it's ready to show, it's sent to public websites, it's sent out in auto notifications. The days on the market start counting at the list date, and all fields must be completed, including a photo. So that's your normal listing, you're ready to go, you market it, you start showing it right away. Did you have a question? No. All right. Now we're going to talk about this one kind of in between, which is what the young lady brought up over here. So you have the option to put it in delayed, you have the option to put it into active. There's another option, and this option is for properties that are ready to market, but they're not ready to show yet. So one of the couple different circumstances here is, let's say that the seller only needs a week to fix whatever they want to fix. Or let's say that you as an agent want to start showings on the open house date. You don't want any showings up until the open house date. In this case, you can put it in as active. And what you need to do is you need to put the show date in the first line of the public remarks. And the reason we want you to put the show date in the first line of the public remarks is because the public remarks go out to all of the websites. And most website vendors will publish the public remarks. And we want the public to understand, oh, I love this house, but I see here, I'm not going to be able to see it. So when I call my agent and they tell me I can't see it, it's not a surprise to me. So we want this to be transparent to the public. So that's why you need to put it in the first line of the public remarks. Now you can also use the show date field in the MLS as well, but that's optional. But the nice thing about the show date field is when you put a date in there, it automatically blocks off those dates on the showing time calendar. We've got an integration there. So it's a little bit of a shortcut for you, so you don't have to also go into showing time and block those dates off. The same rules apply when you put a listing in as active and mark it as no showings allowed. It can't be shown by anybody, even the listing agent. Okay, any questions about the statuses? Yeah?
If an agent doesn't do that, should we report that to you?
So basically, they put it as active and they're denying your showing?
Yeah, they didn't have it in the first line.
Yes, let us know. That's one of the things we actually do look for in our automatic policing. We make sure that if it's talking about no showings, that it's in the first line of the remarks. But if you catch it before we do, yeah, send it in. And one of the things Heather's going to cover is how you can easily report things when you're looking at a listing in the MLS. There's an easy correction button, and she'll show you that later in the presentation. Yeah.
So what's happening when we see properties in delayed and all of a sudden we see them under contract?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, this market is actually creating that issue. And what agents are doing is they're writing offers sight unseen. So they're not showing it because that would be against the rules, but they're writing an offer sight unseen and the seller's accepting it. And then once it's accepted, then that one buyer can go in and see the property. So, and we are seeing a lot of that, unfortunately, because there's just not that much inventory.
So do you amend your listing contract?
You don't need to amend your listing contract for
Because I
that.
don't see an offer, you can just let that buyer in according to what.
Once there's an accepted offer. Yeah, the seller has to accept, but then you have to record it as there being an accepted offer. So then there's that question out there. So sometimes you might want to counsel your sellers and say, maybe we don't want to accept this sight unseen offer. Let's just wait with our original plan and wait till it's available for everybody to see. Because if you only have one offer, how are you going to know that's the best offer? So I don't know that that's the best advice.
That says no sight unseen offers,
Yes, you can do that.
but does it have to be in the
No,
listing contract?
It doesn't have to be. Okay, any other questions? That's a great question.
Does the delayed status have to be changed into active the moment that they sign the contract? On the sight unseen,
You have to move it to a pending status.
right into pending status?
Yeah, you'd have to put it in pending status once there's an accepted offer, yep.
Okay.
And then if it falls through because they don't like
Then you put
it,
it back
then you
into
have to put it back in the market and explain to people why there was an offer that fell off the market, which is kind of sometimes a red flag.
If you're in delayed, when the offer is accepted, you've got to change the status, and you can't go back to withheld delayed.
Correct.
So it
Yep,
might
another good
change
point.
everybody's plans.
Yep, it really does, yep.
Is there a window like 48 hours before it has to be put into accepted offer?
Yeah, you actually have 3 days. So if you can get the showing done in 3 days, then technically you don't have to change it to offer status, yeah.
Patty, what was that question?
That question was, the example would be, let's say that I have a property in delayed and I receive a sight unseen offer, and if I accept that offer, I have 3 days to put it into offer status. If I can get everything taken care of with the showing and deciding if they want it or not within that 3 days, I technically don't have to put it into an accepted offer status because I would have had 3 days.
So you could go into delayed, except your seller accepts the offer, buyer goes, buyer decides they don't want it. They're out, they send you notice, you're still in delayed, and now you go on active and nobody ever knew that you let a buyer in.
Technically.
It seems like a really big loophole for some shady stuff to go out.
Yeah, I mean,
Stay tuned for the new rule this year.
Dan's got it.
No, I'm not on the, I'm not on the board. I'm just saying that'll be the next rule that'll have to be.
Yeah, I mean, and it's happening
Yeah, I mean,
all the time.
what we would have to do to get that, we'd have to say you don't have 3 days to put things in an offer status. You'd have to do it within 24 hours. And then again, you fall back to the problem of offices that have their admins doing everything. It's really hard to have a rule that doesn't allow at least 3 days because agents don't all have access to change their statuses.
Calendar days.
Those would be calendar days.
Does that start the day that it's accepted or the day after?
The day it's accepted. So while the first day is the day after, so it's 1, 2, 3 days. Don't count that first day. These are great questions.
Nobody finds out, but if somebody finds out, then you get big fines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just want to make sure I didn't say that.
Yeah, our rules aren't perfect, but yeah, you're right. And like I said, it's hard to tighten that up just because of the fact that not all realtors can change statuses in the MLS for themselves. Once we maybe go to that, we would be able to say 24 hours or something like that, and you'd have a lot less time frame to do something. All right, great questions. All right. Okay. This is my last slide before I pass it over to Heather. Yep.
Our question. So when you have a status that's active, is there a certain amount of time that you can have showings There's a maximum date that you can allow showings. Like, for example, if I list something on May 30th, how much time do I have after that where I have to allow showings?
Well, you pretty much have to allow showings right away. And if you're not allowing showings, you have to put in the first line of remarks when you will allow
Okay, so if I
showings.
put in the first line of remarks, is there a maximum date that I
No.
can? So you could literally put a showing or an active listing in and have showings a year later?
Accumulating 360.
You can, but you're gonna get a call from a lot of realtors.
Because I saw a listing that didn't allow showings for like a month, and I'm
Yeah.
like, geez, like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it, but I bet you that agent did get a lot of calls from other agents saying, really, dude?
Waves are like, oh, I'm not allowing showings, but you can call me for questions and,
But usually, if they put that out that far, it's because it's an estate and it's not ready, or they're giving an explanation of why you can't do showings
Yeah.
for 30 days.
Right, and maybe delayed is a better
And then
place
they
for one
should
of
be
those.
using delayed, yeah.
I mean, delayed would probably be better. Yeah, and hopefully they are giving the explanation. And if the realtor gets 20 phone calls and has to say the same thing over and over again, maybe they put that explanation in the remarks. Or maybe you could say to them, hey, why don't you put that in the MLS so we don't have to call you and find out. All right. All right, so we talked about listings when they hit our MLS, they go out to the internet. Well, I'm going to just explain a little bit where else they go. One of the places that all of your listings go, delayed and active, is to Wyrex. Now, Wyrex is our statewide data share. We have 9 MLSs in the state of Wisconsin, and 7 of them participate in Wyrex. So the ones that don't participate are Door County and the Northwoods, but everybody else in the state participates in Wyrex. So when you put a listing in our database, basically the whole state sees it. All of the other realtors see it. Okay, on the listing, there is a field that says Internet IDX yes, no. We default it to yes because we assume you want your listings on the internet. If you leave it yes, then it will be sent out to public websites. It'll go to wisconsinhomes.com, homesnap, realtor.com. And it will also go to about 500 office and agent websites, including Zillow. Zillow is a broker, so they're considered a broker website. So there's about 500 of them. And then there's also a product called List Hub that your office can subscribe to for free. And again, that will be a live link in the PowerPoint. Most offices do subscribe to List Hub. And on that site, there's some more specialty. There's about 90 different websites that you could have your listings included on. And a lot of them are more specialty, like luxuryhomes.com and Nextdoor. There's some specific land and farm websites that you could include your listing on. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Heather now. Okay, yep.
So I have a question about Wyrex. A lot of times when I put listings into South Central, it's a very long delay before it even appears in Wyrex. And it could be 24 hours.
It should be within an hour, maybe 2 tops. If you're noticing that, if you could call us.
And the office has called several times and wondered why.
Is it the whole listing or just like the documents that are being delayed?
Very
The whole listing?
Yeah, doesn't show up.
That's kind of news to me for the listing. Sometimes documents lag a little bit, but we're usually seeing an hour or 2 before it's in Wyrex. But I'll monitor that more.
It's a Wyrex issue, it's not a MLS issue.
Correct.
When other listings and other MLSs go in, you also see a delayed appearance in Wyrex or those other MLS listings as well.
When you say they're not appearing in Wyrex, do you mean they're not appearing in the Wyrex Paragon database or like in the Metro MLS?
No, in my Paragon, Wyrex.
In your Paragon Wyrex?
Does not show for, sometimes it's a day.
Well, that's news to
And
me.
Wyrex, that's what I've been explained to, is South Central doesn't have that issue. They put stuff out there, but Wyrex has some sort of issue.
Well, I can see where it might be a delay if we send it to our system, it goes to Wyrex, and then it goes to like Metro Milwaukee MLS. There might be a little bit more of a delay. But between our system and Wyrex, it's basically just one hop, and it shouldn't be taking more than an hour to do that. So I will monitor. Maybe if you notice that next time, you can let me know, and I can try to figure out what's going on.
I have a question that doesn't have to do with any of this, but I need to ask it.
Yeah.
Because there's been a couple times that I put it as active, and then I've just taken a picture of like, with my cell phone quick of the front door, like waiting like a day or two for the pictures to come in. And lately I've been getting these weird text messages with a link that says like the quality of my photo in the MLS. Is that a true thing, or is that like a scam thing?
That's not coming from
And I've
us.
gotten it 3 times. It's like something about the quality of your picture.
pictures.
No, it's just till I went to the photographer, Nikki. But
No,
yeah,
that
I've
wouldn't
never
be coming,
put that in
I don't think that's coming from us. You could send it to us next time, send me a screenshot, I'll see if I can figure out where it's coming from. I don't know that we send out any, unless there's some automated thing that Paragon sends out, but yeah, send it to me, and I'm curious on what that's about.
Yeah, I deleted them, I think. I'll take a little.
Yeah, well, next time you get one, now you won't get one again, obviously, but next time send it over to us.
Somebody's listening you to be there.
All right, okay, well, I'm gonna pass this over.
All right, so as Patty mentioned, my name's Heather Brooks. I'm the one who helps make sure the database is accurate for all of you. I know listening to a presentation about MLS rules is not the most exciting way to spend your morning, so again, we really appreciate all of you being here. So moving on, I'm going to talk a bit about the requirements for new listings. As Patty previously mentioned, having an accurate database is one of the most important parts of the MLS. So this is something that we do a lot of automated monitoring on. We rely in part on members to report potential issues to us. This is what Patty had mentioned about the correction button. There's a little graphic of it. When you're looking at the listing in the MLS, you'll see this little correction button that you can click. When you click it, it'll send an email directly to MLS staff, so we can then follow up on it and get it corrected. There is a $5 per day fine for incorrect data, incorrect or missing data that's not corrected after we notify you about it. We usually give you a couple days to take care of it. If you don't respond to our email or don't get it fixed, then you could potentially receive a fine. But we usually give you at least a little grace period to address and correct that. As Patty also mentioned, all correction emails we receive are handled confidentially, so you don't ever have to worry about the listing agent finding out who reported the issue to us. Another requirement is there are certain fields that you cannot put any kind of contact information or branding in. These are the public-facing fields of the MLS, so this would include things like photos. If you have, take a picture of the front of the house and your sign is in the picture, just make sure you blur that out so your contact information, logos, company name are not visible in that photo before you load it to the MLS. Another section that can't have contact info are the public, virtual, or video tour fields. Because those are visible in the MLS and those are included in listings that buyers see that get sent from the MLS, the listing agent's info can't be included on those. You don't want to be sending a listing to one of your buyers and have the listing agent's contact info covered all over the listing. So that's kind of the reason behind that rule. Public remarks are another field, the directions, and public documents. So we'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but when you add an associated document, condition report, map, feature sheet to the MLS, you have the option to make that public or private. So we're talking about specifically if you mark it as public, that document cannot have any of your contact info or branding on it. So the question sometimes comes up about what can you call a bedroom in the MLS? We don't have a definition for what a bedroom can be. If it's atypical, something like it's missing a closet, it's a good idea just to note that in the public remarks so there aren't any surprises when the showing agent and buyer get to the house and find out, oh, well, I really need a closet in this bedroom and there's not one. So just disclose that in the remarks so people are clear. With that said, rooms do need to meet safety guidelines and have a form of egress to be considered a bedroom in the MLS. If you're unsure, we recommend consulting the Department of Safety and Professional Services guidelines or checking with the local municipality to confirm whether they would classify that as a bedroom. This most often comes up when we're talking about lower level rooms, so a bedroom that's in the basement has to have that egress, has to meet safety standards in order to be called a bedroom in the MLS. If it doesn't, you're welcome to call it a den, an office, some other room, it just can't be a bedroom. And if it is a lower level room, we do require that a photo of the egress window be included in the MLS, and it is helpful if you can add that as a label on the photo, something like, lower level fourth bedroom. So when we're talking about photos, we require you have the ability to add up to 90 photos in the MLS. The only one that's actually required is a front exterior view of the property from street level. And that's required for single family, condo, and multifamily listings. If you have vacant land, business, commercial, you don't have to put a photo in for those. You're welcome to, but not required. It does not have to be in the first photo position. So if the seller maybe just redid their kitchen and you want to feature that as the primary photo, you're more than welcome to do that as long as the front of the home is somewhere in the photo. As I mentioned, they're not required for vacant land, commercial property, property that's under construction. So if construction's not yet complete, you don't have to add a photo until it's actually finished. And also delayed listings. Remember we talked about you don't need a photo while the listing is delayed, you just have to add one at the time it goes active. You do have 7 days from the list date to get that front exterior photo in the MLS, so you have a little bit of a grace period. Most agents, when they're putting a listing in as active, they want to have at least one photo, but you do have that 7-day window from the list date to get it added. This is another one that if it's not in by day 8, we'll send you an email, we'll ask you to add it. If you don't, then there's the potential for a $50 charge because we have to send our MLS photographer out to take the photo and recover that charge. The front exterior photo requirement also extends to sold comps. So if you're adding a comp for, let's say you sold a for sale by owner and you want to add it to the MLS after it closes to get credit, you're welcome to do that, but you do have to have the front exterior photo within 7 days from the date you enter that comp. One other note with photos is you must have the right to use them. So make sure you're either taking the photos yourself or you have the copyright permission to use them. You're not copying photos from another company and putting them on your listing. There is a potential for a $25 per photo fine if you do that without permission from the holder of the copyright to the photo. Make sure your photos are presenting a true picture of the property as well. If you're using anything to enhance the photos, it's a good idea to disclose that on the photo themselves. So for example, a lot of companies will use virtual staging. If it's things like furniture, maybe wall coverings like pictures or things like that, we don't require that to be disclosed, but if you're going so far as to change the color of the paint on the walls or put flooring down in the virtual staging, those definitely should be disclosed so that a buyer is aware that, okay, when they get to the house, they're not expecting to see, brand new hardwood flooring. Just make sure that that's clear. And if you're including photos of a body of water on your listing, it does need to be taken from the property itself or from the deeded access. So if you list a property that's 3 blocks away from Lake Mendota and you can't even see the lake while you're standing on the property, the photo shouldn't be on that listing. We again wanted to present a true picture.
But you can use drone.
Right. Yep, and it's a little bit more subjective with drone photos because you can kind of tell, it's not like you're taking a picture standing at the edge of the lake saying, oh, this might be my front image. Yeah. If it's clear where you can see, you can see the house and then you can see the lake in the distance with a drone photo. Those we don't get complaints on. It's mostly the ones where, somebody's standing right at the edge of the lake and kind of it looks like there could be frontage and there's really not.
I think one question we had recently was like it was a park near the lake, of the lake, the property didn't have lake access, but it was kind of clearly the park and not the property either, but it wasn't labeled. Would that be a?
So when we're talking about like landmarks or parks, we don't have a rule that prohibits that, but if it did show water in the photo, that would fall under this rule.
What about grass on new construction? So I had a photographer tell me that he could not edit it to make it look like the lawn was in, because it wasn't in yet, although it was going to be seeded.
So are you asking?
I wanted him to make it look like it had grass instead of dirt.
Yeah, so that would be another thing, kind of going back to that virtual staging, just disclose it on the photo. So yeah, you could do that, you could have it edited to make it look like there's a lawn, but just make sure on the photo you disclose that, lawn to be seeded or something like that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about associated documents. Associated documents like condition report, condo documents, the addendum S, lead-based paint disclosure, are definitely helpful to include. The MLS doesn't actually require those to be uploaded. We do strongly encourage them because, obviously if you're an agent who's working with buyer and you go to write an offer, it's really helpful for you to just be able to download those documents from the MLS and not have to reach out to the listing agent to request them. That's why we encourage that, but they are not actually required by us as far as having to put them on there. So all documents are private by default. This means that they are only visible to other agents within our MLS. So for that reason, private documents can have branding, company logos, contact info on them. That's okay with private documents. The other option, there's a checkbox when you add the document that says public. And if you check that box, it will mark the document as public, which means that pretty much everybody can see it. Buyers will be able to see it on the listing that's sent out from the MLS. And the other key piece here is that agents outside of our MLS will also be able to see those documents via WireX. So private documents are only in our MLS, only visible to our agents. Public documents will go out to WireX. As I mentioned before, public documents are not allowed to have any kind of contact info or branding on them. There's a little bit of a, go ahead.
One question. So for the public docs, are those able to be seen on the websites like Zillow or other?
Some of them.
Yeah, most websites don't have the documents. We don't include the documents and send them out in our feeds. So you'll see them in WireX, but you shouldn't be seeing them on Zillow. HomeSnap, yes, because HomeSnap is a partner of ours, so you might see them on HomeSnap, but not on Zillow. Zillow is a brokerage website, and we don't send them to any brokerage websites.
Good question. Yeah.
A question about if the seller is a power of attorney and has never lived in the home, they shouldn't be using the condition report where they just X out all the pages. They should be using the other one-page document, correct? That states that they've never lived in the property or something like that.
That would be
How do you do the X?
That would be a good question run by the WRA legal hotline. That's more of a contractual question as far as which form is appropriate. So I would recommend checking with them on that piece.
Sorry about that. Like the real estate, some of the documents that are public do go into Zillow because I've had clients say, oh, I've already seen the real estate condition.
They wouldn't be coming from us. Zillow does allow agents to edit their listings, and that maybe they allow agents to upload their documents, but we don't send the documents to Zillow. So if they have them, it's not from us.
Thank you.
I was gonna mention there's just a small carve out to the no contact info or branding rule on public documents, and that is if the document is contractual in nature, where it's the real estate condition report, lead paint addendum, those documents can display the name of the listing firm as long as it's not in, giant typeface. So if you're generating these documents out of zip form, for example, your company name is automatically going to be printed on those documents. This isn't saying you have to wipe that out before you load these to the MLS, so that's the reason for this carve out. It's more just to prevent, the listing company from marketing themselves on these public documents. All right, so there are specific documents that are required for certain types of properties. Those include auctions, farm properties, those that are marked with the farm type feature in the MLS, limited service listings, and manufactured homes on land. There are documents that you can find on our website that you'll just have to add, you'll complete and you'll add those documents as an associated doc in the MLS when you list those types of properties. Again, if the document's missing, we'll reach out to you and request you add it. We'll give you a copy of the form to fill out. If you don't do it within a few days, then you can be subject to that $5 a day fine for missing info. And there's a link to the portal where you can get those associated docs on the slide presentation. So when we're talking about square footage, we only count finished square footage in our MLS. We do not count any unfinished space. So in order to be counted as finished, there are 4 components you'll want to keep in mind. The space has to be heated, has to have finished walls, finished ceiling, and a finished floor. Now, if one of those 4 components is missing, but the other 3 are there, you can still count it in the finished square footage totals and include that room in the dimensions section. But the missing component would need to be disclosed in the public remarks so that it's clear again to buyers and other agents that, okay, so this room in the basement is heated, has finished walls, a finished ceiling, but it doesn't have any flooring. Just make sure you disclose that lower level rec room doesn't have flooring or needs flooring. When you're measuring rooms round down, we only allow feet in our MLS. So for example, if it's a room that's 14 feet 5 inches, round down to 14 when you're putting it in the MLS. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about just a little bit about the differentiation between, because we do have a field for above grade square footage and part or all below grade square footage. So there's a little graphic here that kind of shows what levels you count as above grade. In order to count as above grade, the level does have to be 100% above ground level. So if we're talking about a lower level that maybe has full-size windows or maybe even a walkout, maybe even exposed on 3 sides, and it just has one side that's partially below the ground, those levels would have to be counted as below grade. That's pretty standard across the industry, so our MLS just keeps with that. There's also a couple of resources here. I'm not going to click out to them, but there'll be active links in the presentation you receive. There's a square footage guide that kind of covers all of this that we've talked about. It's just a 1-page PDF. And then there's also a link out to our website. We have it'll take you out to a map of the state with all of the counties highlighted. You can click on the county and it'll bring up all the different municipalities and a link to the assessor record for each municipality. So if you're ever unsure about the square footage or want to verify some information, this is a really handy tool where you can go out and actually see what the assessor has. Oftentimes they'll have the square footage, they'll have it broken down by above versus below grade, they'll have the bedrooms, the bathrooms. So it's just a really good a resource that's available on our site. Any questions about square footage? Yes.
So someone has a listing and it says finished basement, and you go to the finished basement, and the walls are done, there's electrical, floor is done, but the ceiling is not, there's no drywall or drop ceiling.
is painted,
Yeah.
that's not considered finished.
Technically, no. So, yeah, if there's no ceiling, that would be considered a missing component. So it can still be counted as finished if that's the only missing component, but that should be disclosed in the remarks. Public, yes.
You can't just do the age of remote.
We suggest the public because we, again, want to make sure things are clear and we're being upfront.
Thank you. One question, a home once had paneling on all the basement walls, and so it wasn't drywall. I guess, would that count?
Looks like
Still finished.
Yeah,
Hollow.
Just
like
cheap.
boom against
On
the
the studs, you know?
That's one way to get her done.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of gray area when we're talking about finished versus unfinished. So, you know, our recommendation is always just disclose it, you know, be upfront about it. You know, if we get complaints, we may have to revisit if you haven't provided a disclosure and it's something like that that's kind of gray. But we'll usually work with you on that and, yeah, try to make it fair so the seller has, you know, the ability to market the property as best they can, but the buyer is still also, you know, informed.
I know this is probably a rare example, but like I've seen finished 3 or 4 season porches that are connected to the garage. It's not an attached garage. Is there any advice as to how do you count that as finished square footage somehow?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if it's a 3-season room, those shouldn't be counted in the finished square footage totals because they're not year-round living space. You can still.
But all they're missing is heating. They've got finished walls, ceilings, and floors.
And those are a little bit different because when we're talking about counting something in the finished square footage totals, people are going to expect to be able to use those spaces year-round. So if it's a 3-season room, we do have the room dimensions section where you can put that information in.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be counted in the square footage totals.
Okay.
When we're talking about a 4-season room, yes, those can be counted as finished, included in the finished square footage totals. If it's a room, like in your example, if it's a detached garage that has this
detached
finished
garage,
space
which is with essentially a living space, a finished living space that's
attached
part
to
of
it.
it.
But that's more of an outbuilding or something, because it's not congruent with the main home.
That's why I've not known
Well,
what
what's
to
the
do with it.
acronym that they have for that, like a separate living space? It's like 3-letter,
I mean, it could be a
what is
bedroom.
that called?
True. Yeah, especially if
there you go.
it did have heat. Or,
And that's the kind of situation that, again, it's a little bit on the gray side. So when we've been asked that question in the past, what we've said is, you know, if you are including that in the finished square footage totals, again, use the public remarks to clearly disclose, you know, 250 square feet of the finished living space is this finished space that's detached from the rest of the house that's connected to the garage. You know, if you wanted to play it a little safer, you wouldn't include that in your finished square footage totals, and you'd maybe just mention it in the remarks as, you know, additional 250 square feet of space that can be used.
But as long as it's well described, the MLS police isn't gonna come hunting me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as long as it's clear, we probably aren't gonna get complaints about it if it's clear. So that's kind of where in these gray situations, if we get complaints, that's when we reach out and try to work with you to make it a little more clear to people.
Okay.
Well, you also have to attribute your square footage, so if you're not going off what is assessed anyway, you're gonna have to say price per seller per yourself, which is probably not the best option.
And we do, that's a good point. So square footage is one of the fields that you probably noticed there's the source field that has to be completed. So you can actually, you know, you can, if you get your information from the assessor record, let's say, you can source it to the assessor record. If you physically go out and take the measurements yourself, you can source it to list agent. So, you know, if it were me, I would probably go by the assessor record as long as I felt that was a pretty accurate representation of the square footage, just because then the liability isn't on you. You're going by the assessor record, that's public record, that's what you're sourcing it to. So,
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we take that a little further then? What if there's two houses on the same property? Do you add it together?
that's a good one, yeah. So, there's a couple different ways you can handle it, and this is probably gonna get a little into the weeds. So if there's two houses on one lot, you actually would have the option of marketing that under the multifamily category. We do have a type feature that is specifically for that, two houses on one lot. When you put it in the multifamily category, you have the ability to kind of break the units or the houses apart. So you'll be able to say, unit 1 or main house has 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, this much square footage, and then you can put the room dimensions in. And then there's a separate line where you can list the information about the guest house or second house and put the room dimensions in for that second unit as well. So that may be the most effective way to market that type of property. With that said, if it's a situation where, it's a main home and it's just kind of a little guest cottage, you may also want to market that as single family.
So you could do both?
You could do both in that situation, yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little further in the presentation too. There are certain types of properties that you do have the ability to market in more than one category. And when you do that, when it expires or sells, we just go in and remove the kind of the secondary category, so the sales stats aren't duplicated. But yeah, if you do want to market a property like that under single family, one way to handle that would be to list just the main house in the single family portion and then attach a separate document as an associated document. You can reference that in the public remarks with the additional information about the second house. That's probably how I would recommend doing that. Just so you can describe it a little bit more in that separate document. Yes?
I have a quick question. So this actually just came up recently on a listing. The assessor's website had 3 bedrooms up, and but technically the house was on the second floor. There was 2 bedrooms, and then there was what I assumed was what the assessor was counting. It was actually finished attic space as like a locked bedroom. And so through the showings, we found out that there were actually there wasn't heat going up to that attic finished space. And so I had the seller, she ended up doing an amendment to the condition report, just disclosing that. But technically, I just would have had to add it into the remarks somewhere.
Yeah.
Even after it's live and showing started and all that.
Yep, so if the only component missing was heat up there, then yeah, that would be something you would just want to disclose in the public remarks. And especially because the assessor counted that as a bedroom, I think you could, that's pretty safe to fall back on as far as the MLS is concerned too.
What I think ended up happening is I think it was a 3-bedroom at one point, and then they finished the loft space, and the assessor didn't really see. That's what I'm assuming. I don't really have it before her ownership.
Okay. Yeah, and when it's something like that, again, as long as that attic room met safety guidelines to be used as a bedroom, it had a form of egress and, met the other finish requirements, our MLS would allow you to count that as a bedroom, but yeah, just make sure you disclose any, if that one component of heat was missing, that would have needed to be disclosed.
We're gonna go over that, what counts as a bedroom?
That was on the previous slide.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, and if you want to stay after, we can chat a little more about that if you still have questions. Yeah. Did you have a question up here?
Yeah, so I had a listing before, and the entire house sit under the ground level, but the assessor, in the assessor's website, it says everything counted as square footage for main floor.
Okay.
So what would you do in that instance?
Yeah, so when there's a discrepancy, we kind of fall back on what the assessor shows. So if the assessor classified it all as above grade, then you wouldn't get pushback from the MLS on that. Okay. All right, so couple situations that just wanted to touch on. So when we're talking about new construction, there are actually 3 different type feature options that you can use to reflect what stage the construction is in. The first one is building plan with lot. So what this feature reflects is that construction actually has not begun yet. So let's say you have a lot, you've got a builder who owns the lot, they want to market a building plan that they could construct on that particular lot. You're welcome to put a listing into the MLS to reflect that. You can only enter one building plan per lot, so in order to go on the MLS, a building plan does have to be attached to a specific lot. A building plan without land is not actual real estate, so it wouldn't be allowed in the MLS. For these, if you're marketing a building plan with a lot in the MLS and construction never begins on it by the time it expires, we do remove those from the MLS because it's not a real listing. It hasn't ever really been built. The second stage, so let's say you initially enter it as a building plan with lot, and then at some point during the term of your listing, they start digging the hole and construction begins. You'll want to update that type feature from building plan with lot to under construction to reflect that. At that time, when you choose that under construction feature, you will just have to note the estimated date of completion or the current stage of completion at the time you put it into the MLS in the first line of the public remarks so that everybody's aware of the timeline. We understand this can change, so just keep that date updated if it changes, if construction gets pushed out or back. The third type feature option for new construction properties is new never occupied. So once construction's finished, this is the feature you would move it to reflect that. If there have been any changes between the time you enter the listing and when construction is actually complete, please remember just to update the MLS. You know, maybe they finished the basement and your original listing didn't reflect that. Update the MLS to add the finished square footage in the lower level, the rooms, update your features, just so it accurately reflects what was actually completed. And then once you move it to the new never occupied stage, a photo of the front exterior is required at that point. We had talked about before that point, for under construction properties, you don't have to put a photo in. Once it's finished, that's when that requirement kicks in. One other specific situation, we had kind of talked about the photo requirements when we're talking about properties that are not on water. You can't include a photo of the waterfront if they're not on water. In order to mark the has actual water frontage feature, the property has to be located on a lake, river, or a channel. Any questions on any of that? So this is where we're going to talk a little bit about property types that can be entered in more than one category in the MLS. The first one is if it's a condo that's either a standalone unit, meaning there's just the one unit in the building, or if it's a half duplex shared wall where it has 2 units in the building. Those would first be entered in the condo category if that's how they're legally classified. There's been a condominium declaration, they go in condo first. But you can secondarily market those types of properties in single family as well. There's a type feature in the single family category for condo that you would want to make sure you select so that if somebody sees the single family listing, they understand that it actually is a condominium. And then if there are any condo fees, those need to be noted in the first line of the public remarks. Single family homes, so these are homes that are not legally classified as condominiums. There's no condo declaration that have a shared wall or a monthly maintenance fee. So oftentimes there will be twin homes that maybe have a shared wall agreement, but they're not actually condominiums. Those would go in single family first because they're not legally classified as condos, but they can be secondarily marketed as condos. When you go to enter that secondary listing in the condo category, just be sure you choose the type feature, not a condo single family, so that if a buyer sees it in the condo category, they understand that it's not legally classified that way. Multifamily dwelling that was once a single family home. So we see a lot of these down in the campus area in Madison, where it's a large older home that's maybe been divided into separate units. Those would go in the multifamily category first if they are divided into separate living units. But they can be secondarily marketed in single family if it can be converted back to that use. So, it may be as simple as, just opening up a door between the units. Maybe there's a wall that's been put up that would need to be removed to re-access the stairwell. Just be sure you explain the conversion requirements in the public remarks so that somebody who sees it in the single family category understands what would need to be done to use it in that way. Yes?
If you do have a single family home that has been divided into multiple class and you want to do cross-class listing on it, does there have to be no lease associated with them at the time of the listing?
Nope, that's not a requirement. So yeah, if there's a lease, that's fine. You can still market it in single family. Just it's good to mention that so that it's clear to anybody who sees it that they may not be able to start construction and turn it back into a single family home until that lease is expired.
Thank you.
To the reverse goes for that last category, that there are single family that used to be class or were built as class.
Yeah, so great question. If it's currently a single family home where there's just one unit, but zoning allows for it to be used as a multifamily home, then yes, it can be marketed in the multifamily category as well. We actually do have a type feature for that. That you can select to note that it's single family, but it's zoned for multifamily use, so it could be used either way. Yeah. Thanks for asking that. I forgot to put that on my slide. All right. And then when we're talking about the lots and acreage category, that category is limited to vacant land. Now, if there's a home on it that has little or no value, maybe it's in kind of rough shape, maybe it's a tear down, you can add that listing to the lots and acreage category, but there's a feature under the improvements group for residential structure with little or no value that you would need to select to reflect that. So it's clear that, okay, yes, I'm seeing this property in the vacant land category, but I see by this feature that there is actually a residential structure on it that would need to be addressed. So when you're going to enter the listing, you're going to be putting the primary category in first. Maybe you do that, maybe it's a condo and you standalone condo and you put it in the condo category and it's 2 weeks later and you're thinking, I haven't really gotten as much exposure as I was hoping, so now I want to add it in the single family category. When you go to enter it in single family in the MLS, you're going to run into an issue with the list date because we have the time frame for MLS input. You won't be able to go back 2 weeks to put in the correct list date because it's after that 4-day time period. So what you can do when you're entering these secondary listings is just put in the date, go back your 4 days as far as you can, and then just reach out to MLS staff and we can go in and actually adjust it to match the the condo listing in this example, so the list dates agree. You're not going to get a fine for that as long as it was in one category within the appropriate time frame. You can enter it in that secondary category at any point without any concern with that. And then, like I mentioned, the duplicate or secondary listing will be deleted when it's sold or expired, just to kind of keep the database clean and not have duplicate sales. We don't want to overinflate that. Yes?
What's the best way to list a property that has a lot of land that could be used for farming, like for crops?
Yep, so the vacant land category would be appropriate. The type, we do have a type feature in both vacant land and single family for farm. So you can identify it as a farm property there. That will allow buyers to be able to search for it more easily. There's also a farm features group in vacant land that you can use to identify additional features of the farm. And this is also where we had talked about the associated document requirement. If you mark it as a farm, there's that 1-page document that you would also want to complete and add to the MLS that provides additional information about the farm.
So I was trying to help this person find farms, and we couldn't find, we had a hard time finding under vacant lots or lots, but we found a lot of it under single family.
Were you specifically looking for farms without a home on it?
just looking for, actually, I just looked for remarks with farm.
Okay. So I would recommend in either a single family or a vacant land search, I would recommend utilizing that type feature of farm.
Okay.
Include that in your search because that's gonna get you a lot more hits of these types of properties.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, I was wondering if you have something that you can list across classes, so you go into the MLS and you go to clone it. You can't change your actual class, or at least I couldn't figure out how to do that, so you do have to just redo everything, correct?
You do, yeah, I know that's a question we get asked a lot. So, yeah, the copy clone feature is really handy if you're going between, single family to single family, condo to condo, but it doesn't work from single family to condo or different classes. So, yeah, unfortunately not. You can use the tax autofill feature to save a little bit of time, so that's kind of handy, but although a lot of the fields are common to all of the categories, there's a lot of variation as well, especially in the features section and property info section. So that's why it doesn't really work well to do that copy clone, because there's a lot of different fields between them.
Okay, well, good, because I did it that manual way, so I didn't
Yeah,
waste my time too much.
you're good.
And then another question, if you have an opportunity to list something across, different classes, do you need to have in the listing contract all of the classes that you're looking to list it on?
No, we don't require that, no. You're welcome to market it, yeah, however you and the seller agree to, so, yeah.
Thanks.
Alright, so moving on to listing changes. So most of the changes in the MLS, it's gonna be a 3-day window, and this again is calendar days that we're talking about. So if you have a price change, most of the time you're gonna report that right away, especially if it's a decrease, because you probably want to get that information out there, but you do have up to 3 days to make that change in the MLS. If the price change is at least 0.5%, that's what's gonna trigger it to show up as a price change on the market monitor and hot sheets. It's going to cause that property to be sent out again in auto notifications and show up as a price change on the Lab Center and the spreadsheets in the MLS. It'll show up as either a red or green up-down arrow for 2 weeks after the price change is made. So one thing that we get questions on quite often is the difference between expired status and withdrawn by seller status. Those statuses do mean different things. Expired status means that your listing contract is over, done with, it's no longer in effect. You and your seller no longer have that listing contract in place. Withdrawn by seller status means that your listing contract actually still is in effect, but the seller has said no more marketing or showing. So they basically don't want you to market it or show it any longer, but you haven't released them from their listing contract early. So if that's the case, you would move it to withdrawn by seller status, not expired. Once a listing's moved to withdrawn by seller status, your office won't be able to reactivate it. So you need to contact the MLS if your seller down the road says, actually we do want to start marketing and showing it again. We can make the change on our end for you if you get an amendment from the seller with that direction that they actually do want to continue marketing it and go back to active status. But that change can only be made once per listing. So if you withdraw a listing, the seller changes their mind, they want to go back to active, you get the amendment from them, you send it to us, we reactivate it for you. Seller says, oh, actually no, I changed my mind again. You withdraw it again. If they come back and change their mind again, at that point you would need to get a new listing contract. You'd expire out your current one, sign a new contract, put it in as a brand new MLS number. That'll have the added benefit of causing the days on market count to reset. So, if you've been the goal with this is not to have a seller that changes their mind and flips back and forth from withdrawn to active multiple times. If a seller only wants to temporarily suspend showings, but they want to keep the listing out there and continue marketing it, you do have the option of leaving the status active, but you need to put the date that showings resume in the first line of the public remarks, just so if other agents or buyers see an active listing, they call you to schedule a showing or try to schedule a showing, they're not gonna be frustrated when they find out, oh, actually, we're not showing it for another 2 weeks. So just be sure to put that in public remarks. I think your hand was up first.
I just have a question. So when listing expires, there is like a wait time to put in the market again? To start from zero and they put market, or you have to just do it the next day?
So it's up to you. So let's say, your listing expires today and you sign a new listing contract that goes into effect tomorrow. You're more than welcome to, put that back on the MLS as a new listing, new MLS number tomorrow. There's no mandatory wait time. When you put a new listing on the MLS, every time you have a new MLS number, your days on market count starts from 0 or starts fresh. The cumulative days on market looks at listings over the last 31 days. So in the example where you expire it today, relist it tomorrow, your days on market count will show as 0, but your cumulative days on market will continue looking at where that past listing left off. The only way to reset that cumulative days on market count is for the listing to be off the market for that 31-day time frame. And then when you relist it on day 32, that will start the cumulative days on market count from 0 as well. Good question. Do you have your hand up too?
Yeah, I do. Or I did. Can I functionally suspend offers from coming in if the situation presents itself?
So the seller would want to continue marketing.
Yeah, everything stays on the market,
Okay.
listing stays on, but like, for example, if you needed to suspend showings and suspend all other activity for 3 or 4 days, right? Your responsibility as an agent is to continue to present offers as they come in, but if that's not feasible, can you present that to the broader real estate world and say,
No show.
4 days, no showings, no offers?
Yeah, I think having that disclosure in the first line of the public remarks, similar to if they're not allowing showings, would be, the best way to alert everybody of that situation.
Okay.
It has to be in your contract. It has to be contractual.
Yeah, and that's another piece that's.
What is that?
Mary was saying, if your seller has directed you not to present offers, that should be in your listing contract as well, that direction.
What happens if the decision to suspend all activity doesn't happen at the time you're writing the contract, right?
An amendment then, yeah.
You do have to get an amendment in order to, okay, got it.
Yes. All right, so when we're talking about relisting a property, we covered a little bit of this. In order to enter a new MLS number, you do have to have a new listing contract. So if you want that days on market count to start fresh, you would have to expire your current listing agreement, sign a new contract in order to be able to put a new MLS number in. Adding a new MLS number without a new contract could potentially come with a $50 fine. So just make sure you're getting the paperwork to back that up. And we kind of just talked about the resetting the days on market. If you want to reset that cumulative days on market, just make sure the property's been off the market for that 31-day time frame, and then when you re-enter it on day 32, it will start from 0. Yes.
For that cumulative days on market, what if you get a listing from someone else that previously listed it? Do you have to wait the 31 days, or is it only if you're like relisting it again?
So you don't have to wait the 31 days. As long as the previous firm's contract has expired, you can relist it the very next day. But if you want that cumulative days on market count to reset, you'd want to wait that 31 days.
Even if it's a different firm?
Yeah, it'll still look at, even if it's a different firm. The days on market will reset anytime it's relisted, but the cumulative will continue tracking even if it was previously a different firm. Yeah. All right, so then when you get an accepted offer, yay, you've got 3 days to change the status to reflect that in the MLS. There are a few different options depending on the situation. If a bump clause applies, so typically this is going to be when you have a home sale contingency, that offer may be bumpable. You have the option to change the status to offer bump. We also, in that case, allow the status to be left as active but the disclosure of the accepted offer with the bump clause, or if it's an accepted offer, that's a short sale situation, would need to be included in the first words of the broker remarks. So those are the only two cases where you have an accepted offer and you can leave the status as active, is if it's either bump clause or short sale situation. In all other cases, you're going to have to either change the status to offer show, which means that there's an accepted offer, but the seller wants to continue showing, marketing, looking at secondary offers, or offer no show, which means just the opposite. There's an accepted offer, but the seller says, nope, I don't want any more showings, change it to offer no show. When we're talking about the difference between offer show and offer no show, we aren't looking at the contingency status. The only thing we're looking at is whether the property can continue to be shown or not. So that means if you have a seller, you get an accepted offer, and they say, I know there's an inspection contingency, I know there's a financing contingency, but I just don't want to have any more showings. We're happy with this. You can change it directly from active status to offer no show status. That's fine to do even if there are contingencies. It's strictly based on whether the seller wants to continue showing or not. Once the status goes to offer no show, the days on market stops counting. And if you have a seller that says, okay, we've got this accepted offer, we do want to continue showings until maybe we are through the inspection period, you move it to offer show status within your 3-day time frame, and then at some point the seller says, okay, we're good, we don't want to have any more showings. Make sure you move the status to offer no show at that point, just so other agents and buyers aren't still seeing the property out there in offer show status and thinking they can call and schedule a showing, and then finding out that no, actually the seller's not allowing showings anymore. So just make sure you move it to offer no show at that point. The other thing to note is that if the listing contract is going to expire before closing, while your offer is still in place, and you're not planning to extend your listing contract, that's okay. You don't have to. But make sure you change the status. If you have it in offer show, make sure you change the status to offer no show prior to the date that your listing contract is set to expire. Even after the expiration date passes, the status will remain offer no show in the MLS. If you leave it in offer show and the expiration date passes, it will switch to expired, which isn't really a true reflection of the situation because you do actually have an accepted offer in place. So offer no show is okay even if your listing contract has expired. It's an inactive status, which is why days on market stops counting when it goes to that status. Any questions? Yes.
And then with that expiring, would you then come back and change the status afterwards to sold?
Yes.
To reflect it?
Yep.
We'd have to do that manually then?
Yep. Yeah, so the goal is if you have an accepted offer, we don't want the status to go to expired. We would want it to go to offer no show if you're not going to be extending your listing contract, and then from offer no show you would move it to sold. Yep. All right, and then the fine, there's a fine for late reporting of accepted offers. It's $5 per day. We want the data to be accurate, so just be sure that you're putting in the correct AO date when you're marking those accepted offers. All right, so then we've gotten to closing. We want to change the status to sold, and you have a 10-day window to do that. Again, this is in calendar days. Just make sure the status is changed to sold within 10 days of closing. If a team has been involved in this on the sales side, they're the ones who work with the buyer, and they have a team record in the MLS, meaning the word team or group appears in their record, report the sale under the team name if they've requested you to do that. If they do not have a team record, you do not have to report it under the team leader. You can report it as the listing agent, however you see fit, as long as it's attributed to the correct company. If a non-MLS member sells one of your listings, so if you've looked in the MLS and you can't find the agent in the sale agent field, you can use SCWMLS non-member as the sale agent to reflect that. And then just be sure you add the name of that agent and office in the broker remarks, so there's some record of who actually was involved on the buyer side. So when we're talking about for sale by owners or one-party listings, obviously for sale by owners will not be on the MLS. So in order to, you can add a comp for those types of properties after closing if you'd like. Same for one-party listings. These are listing contracts where they specifically say that they only apply to one named buyer. Usually it says something like, this is a one-party listing for buyer John Smith. Those are not MLS eligible because the seller's only giving you the authority to market and sell the property to that one buyer. It's not a blanket listing that you can market to the public. So therefore, those do not go on the MLS while they're active. You can add those after they close as comps. This is optional. You're not required to add a comp for these types of properties. And if you do decide to, that 10 days of closing rule does not apply. You can add them at any point. Usually we pull stats around the 15th of the month, so if you want it to be counted in the prior month stats, that would be kind of a goal, but again, not required. When you're entering a sold comp, the big thing to remember is to enter it directly into sold status, not active first. If you enter it in active, even if you change it to sold right away, the system's very quick in sending out data to all the websites and in buyer searches, so we really don't want those to go out as active, have a buyer see it and get all excited and then find out that, oh, it's actually closed already. You'll use the actual contract dates. So if you have a one-party listing, you'll want to use your term of the contract dates as your list date and expiration date in the MLS. If we're talking about a FSBO where there's no listing contract, you would use the accepted offer date for the list date. If you want to use the showing date, the date that you first showed it, that would be fine to use as a list date too. When entering comps, all of the required fields are still required, with the exception of room dimensions. If you don't, you're probably not going to be going through with your tape measure and measuring a property that you don't have listed, especially in the case of FSBOs. So if you don't have the room dimensions, it's okay to enter those as 0 by 0 for sold comps. But we do want to make sure that the room types and levels are all accurate. So just make sure you're putting in, there's 3 bedrooms, there's a living room, kitchen, downstairs there's a rec room. You can just put the dimensions in as zeros. And as I mentioned previously, the photo requirement does apply, so just make sure you have a front exterior photo. If you have more photos than that, great. It's helpful when somebody's looking to use it as a comp, but we only require the one front exterior. And again, there's a $5 per day fine if a sale is reported after that 10-day window from closing. And again, just make sure the closing date is accurate. Okay, so just a couple of resources here. Our website, scwmls.com, has a lot of content on it, especially there's a listings information section that is pretty lengthy, but we do have a little table on the left, table of contents, that's in alphabetical order by topic, so I think it's fairly easy to navigate. Again, you can always call our office. You can email us at listings@wisry.com with questions. There's also a link to a summary of listing rules. It's a little bit more condensed version of what you'll find on the website. I think it's about 5 pages long, so it's still pretty long, but covers kind of everything we went through in today's presentation. So I guess I'll open it up to any additional questions any of you might have at this point. Yes?
Can you kind of outline the rules regarding the coming soon signs in terms of a listing?
Yes, so coming soon signs. So remember when we talked about the earliest you can start marketing a property. So you'd want to make sure that sign doesn't go up in the yard until the first day of the term of your contract actually starts. So that date on line 311 of your listing contract, once that happens, you can put that coming soon sign in the yard. And then you have 1 business day to get it on the MLS from that point. Yep. And if you're putting it on in delayed status, that's fine. you can do that. You can put it on emails delayed or active. You can have a sign up while it's delayed. You can be marketing it elsewhere. You can put it out on social media as long as it's on the MLS within that one business day frame. Yeah. Thanks.
I'm sorry, did you say it can have a sign in delayed status?
Yes, yep, so yeah, we don't have any restrictions on what you can, how you can market it while it's delayed. Basically, and I know that's a part that I kind of struggle to explain sometimes, because delayed means you're not fully ready to market it yet, because when it's delayed in the MLS, it doesn't go out to all the sites that get a feed, it doesn't go out in the buyer searches. So it's not being fully marketed, but that doesn't preclude the listing agent from still putting a sign in the yard, putting a coming soon post on social media. As long as agents can find it in the MLS within one business day of when you do any of that marketing, that's in line with the rules.
Okay, thank you.
Anyways, well, you can always reach us if you walk out of here and think of 5 more questions at this information here. I think you'll be getting a link to the presentation, including all the links that are contained within it after the meeting. So,
No, thank you guys for coming.
yeah, thank you very much.